You all look a little different today. Matter of fact, I don't know where anyone is. Could it be because you're not sitting in your same seat? How you doing with that? You okay? Anybody freaking out? Okay. Anyone having a panic attack, obsessive compulsiveness kicking in? I think it might have been for me. But it could have been worse. Paul Strand convinced me not to separate you into the sheep and the goats. So, although while I was reading the gospel, I was like, wow, on the right hand, the sheep, on the left hand, the goats. That was just divine intervention. You picked the tab, guys. But we know, on any given day, we can both be sheep and we can both be goats. Why the musical chairs? Well, we're on week 6 of Barbara Down Taylor's An Altar in the World. And this week, Barbara challenges us with the practice of encountering others. And I thought maybe this was the safest place to start. If we can't do it here, then I'm guessing we're all doomed. Doomed because, as Barbara reminds us, to encounter another human being is as close to God as we may ever get. The consequence of not truly knowing others is not truly knowing God. How often do we see people but not really see people? How often do we see people but just as a means to our end rather than as a human being? The hardest spiritual work in the world, Barbara says, is to love the neighbor as the self, to encounter another human being not as someone we can use or change, fix, help, save, enroll, convince, or control, but simply as someone who can spring us from the prison of ourselves if we allow it. Do we see the bagger at Byerly's as a careless teenager bagging our groceries, smashing our produce and bread, or as a young man working to help pay the bills since his father died? Do we see our server at the restaurant as inattentive and lazy, or as a single mom working a second job so she can pay the rent? Do we see the older person in line in front of us as someone in the way and just slowing us down, or as someone who just lost the love of her life and is sadly alone? Do we see Jesus in any of them? Do we see Jesus in anyone ever? Jesus speaks directly today with our encounters with other. You heard it. Then the King will say to those at his right hand, "Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will say, "Lord, when was it?" I'd be remiss today in not mentioning Martin Luther on Reformation Sundays. I think Lutheran pastors might get fired for that, or maybe shunned or condemned to hell. But it's no secret that Luther had no problem whatsoever encountering others, especially those who didn't quite think like he did. We know about his differences with Pope Leo and the Catholic Church and the selling of indulgences. We remember Luther as loud and opinionated, which he was. But Luther was also a pastor. Luther, along with his wife Katie, spent their lifetimes caring for the other. Financially, they were poor. yet Luther House was always open to the stranger. When the plague hit Wittenberg, most residents fled the city during the epidemic, but Martin and Katie remained, turning Luther House into a hospital. Luther later wrote about it, referencing today's gospel, "No one should ever be abandoned. And Matthew's gospel teaches all Christians are linked together so we cannot desert anyone in need, but are duty-bound to help him or her in the same way as we would want this person to help us in our needs. And by God's grace, each neighbor must become a caregiver and nurse for the suffering ones." Luther encouraged the faithful with these words, "We must say to the devil, 'Get out of my way with your scaring. In defiance of you, I will help my sick neighbor, and knowing that it is pleasing to God and all of his angels. Since Christ has shed his blood for me and died for me, how can I not, for his sake, place myself into this small danger of powerless pestilence?" He was always so eloquent with words. You know, every once in a while, life can be very persuasive. We go along day to day not noticing very much, not seeing or hearing very much, and then all of a sudden, when we least expect it, something speaks to us with such power that it catches us off guard, makes us listen whether we want to or not. Something speaks to us out of life with such directness. It's as if it calls us by name and forces us to look where we have not had the heart to look before, or to hear something we have not had the courage to hear. We call it a reality check. When we opened Chick-fil-A in Maple Grove in October 2013, we hired just over 100 people of different religious faiths, sexual orientation, race, countries of origins, political leanings, and more. None of those differences matter. We were just looking for good people. But apparently those differences matter to others. In those first few months, I received several customer comments, but there's only one I remember. It was online. The person said, "I love Chick-fil-A, but it looks like you've hired a bunch of people from North Minneapolis. Why don't you hire people from Maple Grove?" Initially, I had no idea what that meant, but now I do. Do I have to explain it to you, spell it out for you? I somehow doubt it. None of us, though, is innocent. We're shocked by the words, but only because someone was honest about what many think. Let's admit it. North Minneapolis is an unwritten code name for a community infested with crime and poverty, high unemployment, low education, the least of these. One New York Times article calls it Minneapolis's less visible and more troubled side, an opened wound as discomforting as its bone-chilling winters. And because we rarely cross the boundaries into North Minneapolis, it's invisible to us. We don't see the Minnesota not so nice. The groups who have worked with Urban Homeworks the last few summers helping to restore some of the living conditions in North Minneapolis have seen a little bit of a glimpse of it. But we don't meet the residents there, and we don't hear their stories, and we forget that for them, it is home. We often make judgments of people who we don't even know. We say things about people that we would never say to people. We struggle encountering others, especially those who are different than we are. So what's the point? What are we supposed to do with this knowledge? I got to this point in writing yesterday, and I just wanted to throw it all away and not go on, because I don't have a clear answer to this. What do we do? Do we feel guilty? Because feeling guilty is one of the things we're really good at. Are we sad yet helpless to do anything about it? Or maybe we're cynical because no matter what we do, nothing is going to change? Or are we unwilling to do anything because we've been burned too many times? Or maybe we're just afraid, and so we do nothing. We struggle to find answers. But if we always do what we have always done, we will always get what we have always got. It's interesting, in today's gospel, both the sheep and the goats were surprised by Jesus' words, asking, "Lord, when was it we saw you?" The goats aren't necessarily bad people. We just get the feeling that had they known, they would have done the right thing. The sheep were doing the right thing, no matter what the motivation. They just did the right thing. In the Gospel of Thomas, which did not make it into the Bible, but we still use as a good resource, Jesus passes someone giving help to someone on the street and says, "Bless you if you do not know the good thing you are doing. Curse you if you know the good thing you are doing." You know, anytime we encounter others, we have no idea the impact we will have on their lives. What is a small gesture in our minds may make the world of difference in someone else's life. Truly, I tell you, just as you did it to the one of the least of these, you did it to me. Encountering others, caring for others, seeing Jesus in everyone as people of faith, it's the heart and soul of who we are. Each day when we come here, each Sunday, the Word of God just speaks to us and teaches us and transforms us. And God just washes our eyes to see what was once invisible. In everyone we encounter, we see His majesty standing right before us. We no longer have to think about it, we just do. It comes naturally to us from the wholeness who we are in Jesus Christ. We look at it as right before us and understand it in a new sense. We see the person standing right in front of us, who has no substitute, who can never be replaced, whose heart holds things for which there is no language, whose life is an unsolved mystery. And without thinking, we love them. Truly, I tell you, just as you did it to the least of these, you did it to me. And who among us is not, at one time or another, the least of these? Amen.